Accutron Watches present. From New York City, this is the Accutron Show, a time travel through American culture with your hosts, Bill McCuddy, Scott Alexander, and David Graver. Visit AccutronWatch.com and discover the brand that has made American history with an all-new proprietary next-generation electrostatic energy movement. Accutron. It's not a timepiece, it's a conversation piece.
We're not set up for that system. So here in the United States, it's very alienating. And soccer is supposed to be a very welcoming sport, and it is pretty much throughout Europe and throughout the world.
The person you heard at the top of the show is today's guest, former goalkeeper of the United States women's national team, World Cup champion, and two-time Olympic gold medalist, Hope Solo. But first, me, Bill McCuddy, who's never kicked a ball that didn't kick me back, along with culture writer Scott Alexander and editor David Graver. We are talking sports, and I am way out of my field. All that and more on this episode of The Accutron Show. Stay tuned.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our iconic Space View 2020 collection, recreating the stunning visual impact of the original open dial design combined with an all-new electrostatic energy movement. Time just changed again. The Accutron Space View 2020.
This will surprise no one. I was that guy who was either never picked or the last person picked in any kind of sporting event as a child.
Do you want to talk about it?
Not really, but
this?
You know what's interesting about our guest today, Hope Solo, is that I would have been the guy that would have been put in front of the goal because I was the big fat kid. So I'd have been the guy who just stood there and blocked it.
Okay, so
but there's a lot more to it.
I cannot be more excited to talk to Hope Solo. That was my position. I was a goalie.
Really?
Growing up. Yeah, I grew up in England. Soccer was really serious. I've coached, my son's soccer teams, my daughter's soccer teams. I live and breathe soccer, and when I used to watch her play when she was on the U.S. women's team, I would just get I would be a mess, and then I'd just see her, and she's just this rock, just this intensity, this diamond in the eyes kind of thing where you're just like,
I bet that's the
man.
gig. I wonder, we should ask her about that, about the responsibility of keeping it all together for everybody else, because she's not the coach.
But it's not.
Per
it's
se.
not like you put the whoever in the goal. The kid needs to be able to do it, or they'll just kick it into the goal. There's much more
couldn't
goal.
do it.
There's much more goal than there is
Don't remind
kid.
me. I'm having bad flashbacks now.
I definitely do want to talk to her about gender in sport. So I'm from Connecticut, and when the Whalers left us when I was some 6 years old, we had no professional hockey team. We had UConn women's basketball, and that's one of the greatest sports dynasties in the history of time. So I grew up revering women in sports. But the U.S. has a long way to go. The world has a long way to go, and I think she'll have lots of insight on women in sports.
She's suing to get recognition for this. She's trying to get equality in pay. She's in the courtroom, has been for a long time. There's a class action suit she's going to update us on, and a lot is happening. Also, soccer turns out to be something that homeless people get involved in, that underprivileged kids can play. It's an incredibly user-friendly sport. You walk onto a field with
super
a ball.
egalitarian. Well, it's super egalitarian everywhere but the U.S.
Yeah, it doesn't.
We're
going to ask her about that, obviously. Also, her life seems like a movie.
Indeed.
I mean, she's going into the courtroom. Probably, who would be Keira Knightley with the ball in the Your Honor. I don't know what the movie would be, but I'm telling you, she's got a movie in her. And we will see if anyone has approached her about maybe making the story of her life. Hope Solo joins us after this break, and we'll be right back in the Accutron Show.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our Accutron DNA collection, reimagined for a new generation. The Accutron DNA combines breakthrough technology, precise engineering, and modern aesthetics to achieve a new level of technical excellence. The Accutron DNA, the new face of time for those who blaze new trails.
Hope, welcome to the Accutron Show. I guess the first question is, when you have a gold medal or you have a World Cup, what do you get, and where is it? Where is it now in your house?
Oh, I'm not sure the audience wants to hear that answer.
Uh-oh.
So my husband and I used to have a 6,700 square foot home in Seattle, Washington, right? And we decided to up and move and build our own home in North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina. So it's very rural. And we've been in the process of building our main home. So we have the mother-in-law cabin right now that you see me in.
Oh, okay.
And in the meantime, I hate to say this, but all of my medals, my golden gloves, they're all in storage. They're either in a safe or in storage.
They're an
I
excellent
hate to say that because our home is so small. All we have room for in this mother-in-law home is a mother-in-law and twins. We don't have a sports room or an office.
Right.
And in Seattle, we had a great big sports room, and we hung all of our,
But ultimately, you'll have a sports room. You're building it. It's in the process right now.
I don't think my kids are going to believe I played soccer or my husband played football.
Well, please keep the payments up on storage, because I don't want to turn on Storage Wars and see like a big guy from Encino buying your
Golden gloves. Yeah, we have Hope Solo's golden gloves.
I hope life doesn't go in that direction.
You did bring up something absolutely epic, and that's World Cup and the Olympics. Hope, I'm wondering if you could tell us like the emotional or spiritual or physical experience of the difference between the two.
Yeah, there's quite a big difference. In fact, for me, for most soccer players, the World Cup is the absolute echelon of your sport. It's the biggest tournament that you could possibly win in respect for your particular sport. In this case, obviously soccer. There is a World Cup of rugby and other World Cups. And in my experience, the World Cup is a dedication to its sport on the highest level. And everything is different. There's better, I don't know how to explain it. There's better security. It's very professional. The venues are even more soccer specific or internationally football specific. The Olympics, you really feel like the respect of the sport during a World Cup. The Olympics is, you feel like you're really representing America. You feel so American and so patriotic, and you see all the different countries. It's a pride of your nationality, really, is what the Olympics are, where the World Cup is a pride for your sport. So it's very different. In the World Cup, you have an extra day of rest, which often brings a better quality of football. Whereas the Olympics, it's grueling physically. You asked about the difference between the emotional side or the mental side or the physical side. And the physical side is very grueling during the Olympics because you have one day less of rest. But at the same time, there's more teams in the World Cup. So for me, the best teams are in the World Cup. And when you win a World Cup, you can retire then and there, and you can be happy with your career.
You mentioned the physicality. How many total games do you play when you make it all the way at the Olympics?
Oh God. So for instance, in the last Olympics, there was 16 teams, which is 4 short or fewer than the men's team, which in this day and age, we can get into that conversation. I still don't understand why the international, the IOC doesn't have the same amount of men's teams as women's teams. So in the Olympics, there's only 16 teams for the women. So you have to be the top 2 of your group. And then there's 2 or 3 wild card third place teams, I believe.
Yeah, and it's got to be on your best. I mean, the other thing with the Olympics is you can't call in sick. I mean, you can't have a bad day. That's got to be the best you've done in your entire life. And David's right. The pressure is probably different, right?
Like I said, everything is different. It was different for me when I played, between the spiritual side of the game, between the World Cup and the Olympics, the mental side, the emotional side, as well as the physical side. You do have to be on your A game, no matter what tournament you play in, whether it's the World Cup or the Olympics. You have to be, you can't take a game off. And that's what we saw happen in the current USA team in the 2019, not the 2019 World Cup, I'm sorry, in the what do we call it now? The 2021 Tokyo Olympics, supposed to be 2020. Right. So it happens quite often, especially when you have back-to-back World Cups followed by within 10 months, the Olympics, it's very, very difficult. Even if you're the best team in the world, like the United States usually is, it's very difficult to win both because it's so emotionally and mentally, and of course, physically taxing. And that's why often you don't see a team go back-to-back World Cup champions and then Olympic champions.
You talked a little bit about the mental game, and to me, I played goalie back when I played, amateur soccer back in the day, and there's a difference in the mentality, it feels like, of playing goalie versus playing almost anywhere else in the field, like where it's like the buck stops with the goalie, really. Is that something you've thought about, those differences?
Yeah, of course. I don't wish being a goalkeeper on even my worst enemies. Yeah, toughest position in all of sports, truly. I really do. I think it's all about the teeny tiny intricacies, and you have to be perfect. If you're not perfect, you're the hero or you're the goat. And if you are perfect, which I think goalkeepers need to be efficient, and they have to have really great footwork, lateral speed. They have to make the position look easy. And so when you actually are efficient at it and you make it look easy, then the crowd isn't getting that game-winning top corner save that everybody wants, right? But oftentimes when they're making that top corner save, it's because of their angles, or because they're slow in their footwork, or because of they're out of position. So the best goalkeepers in the world actually make it look very, very easy. And it's such an intricate position that it's never easy. And it's something that challenged me my entire career, because you could never be great at it. You have to constantly work on, you're going to get scored on. So you always have something to improve upon. And when I look at my field players, a lot of my teammates, if we're both nervous, I have to have a very calm demeanor, because I'm organizing the defense. They oftentimes piggyback off of my emotions. So I have to be very strong in my demeanor and very calm in my demeanor. Whereas a field player, if they're nervous, even if I'm nervous, I don't want anyone to know, but if they're nervous, they can just go out, run as fast as they can, get a sprint, get a tackle in, go up for a header. And then they kind of can relax, because it's more of a instantly physical. Yeah. Whereas my position is much more mental. It's a very difficult position, all of sports.
Right, and you're kind of holding that tension the whole time, but then never being able to sort of betray that to your teammates, being the rock, in the back.
Can you tell, looking, in poker they have tells where they can they're aware of who's gonna whether they're bluffing or not. Can you see in some players which way they're gonna kick it, or can you learn it as they're coming towards you?
Oh man, there's so many different philosophies when it comes to penalty kick taking. The best I ever was when I went with completely. What do you want to call it? The force, right? Completely the force.
And you've turned off your tracking computer.
I read the other player. It was me versus her. Everything else was put aside. I didn't listen to coaches. I didn't look at the statistics. I didn't watch too much video. It was just me versus the other player. And I felt like I got my mojo, and I was in the moment. And those were some of my best playing days, as well as my best penalty kick defending days. But then, this new age type of sport that we continue to evolve, it becomes sometimes less about one's own innate ability and almost more statistical. And that was really tough, because there's a fine line. You want science to be instituted into the sport. You want some of the best science, so that we're the fittest team in the world. But at the same time, you still want to rely on those intangibles. And some of those intangibles are winners, just plain winners. Somebody like Abby Wambach, you can't explain why she did it, but she'd get the ball in the back of the net and she would do it time and time again. Right. And I never want to take that ability away from that athlete that makes himself different. And at the end of my career, I had coaches tell me, you have to go right 5 times during the entire shootout, because most likely you'll get 2 penalty place kickers who will go to your right. And so it became this, I never really bought into it, but it was a statistical thing where I had to do. So anyways, it's tough. You always have to make decisions for your team. You have to respect your coaches, but also you want to rely on yourself. So it's very difficult.
I'm curious if your dream changed along the way, your dream being a young child with a soccer ball to an Olympian to a World Cup champion. Did your dream as a player modify or change or grow, or was it always the same?
Oh, I always wanted to be the best. I was competitive. I wanted to win. I was unapologetic about it. I just wanted to win. I wanted to didn't mean I was the best goalkeeper, but I wanted to push myself to be my best and make it to World Cups and make it to Olympics. And it wasn't easy. I mean, I got cut a million times. I always was that young goalkeeper with potential. I started to hate the word potential because I wanted it right then and right now. I was very impatient.
It feels like getting a boy to think he's the best player is not that hard. But trying to get some of these girls, these young women, to just believe, like some of them have this amazing talent, and sometimes it's really a mental game there. Is there anything that you held on to there in terms of like being able to hold on to your ego there in the sport?
It's hard to hold on to your ego, especially as a young girl. And I see it, I have a lot of friends who are coaching directors at major clubs throughout the United States, or as well as coaches for very good teams, both college and club teams, and ODP scouts, for instance, or U.S. Soccer scouts. So I have the gamut of experience in terms of kind of people who relay things back to me. And I'm also on this app called Mentor Cam, where I get to actually mentor some of the young goalkeepers who are aspiring to do big things and young soccer players. So I see this lack of confidence in young girls, and I hear it from those who are close to me who are coaching directors. And they say, girls these days, and I think probably always, it's not popular to stand out. We all want to be part of the group. Mm-hmm. We want to be liked. We are afraid to stand out. And that's really difficult as a 12, 8, 9, 10. Recently, I had somebody on Mental Cam tell me they were 13 years old, and they're very dedicated in being the best that they can be, but it's not popular because they have to make sacrifices and they can't hang out with their friends on the weekends. So their friends have started to essentially make fun of them for being so dedicated to something that they love. And it brought me back to my youth, how I went through the same thing. I wasn't popular because I was so dedicated. I was traveling on the weekends. I was missing prom. I was missing homecoming. I was playing soccer tournaments all the time. I was called a tomboy, and it wasn't very popular. And I haven't seen much change, to be honest. Girls still want to be liked by their group of friends, right, and they're afraid to stand out. And, coaches, I feel for you because we have to find a way to really bring that confidence out and allow these young girls to stand out and be the best that they can be.
But what about being a goalkeeper? Isn't that the hardest thing to talk a young girl into? Because they want to run around, but man, they don't want to be responsible for letting the ball come in and score on them. So isn't that the toughest position to fill?
I think that the best athlete on the field needs to be your goalkeeper. You see it on the men's game, especially when you watch, English football. You don't see goalkeepers who aren't, you can tell their physicality. They're tall, they have power, they're quick. They have a gamut of positivity in their play. And in America, we've almost allowed the lesser of the athlete be the goalkeeper because I think of our lack of knowledge in the sport, our lack of discipline in the sport, and our lack of history in the sport. But when you look overseas, you still get those jokes about goalkeepers. They can't play with the ball at their feet. But in the modern game, goalkeepers have to be able to play with the ball at their feet, but they also have to be fit. They have to be strong. They have to be tall. They have to be good in the ball, coming out for the ball in the air, their aerial game. So they have to have a good presence overall. And so I think if we had more respect in our position in the United States, then you'd see more young boys and girls wanting to be a goalkeeper. But that's one of the things I'm most proud of is I believe I made goalkeeping cool and I did change that. I always was the fittest on my team, whether it was on the national team or my club team or my college team. And I believe, a lot of young girls started wanting to be a goalkeeper because I was great and because I was a badass. And it's all about, how we look at the position in the United States, and it's evolved and it's continuing to evolve.
What can we as a society do to support women in sports? Because we're not doing enough. I know there's been some change, but how can everyone help?
I don't have the answer to that. Honestly, it's a question I get a lot. I do a lot of speaking engagements at colleges, throughout the United States as well as overseas. And I don't know how everybody can come to the table. The one thing that I continue to go back on is to educate ourselves. So, I I was the first athlete to file against my employer, United States Soccer Federation, under the Equal Pay Act and Title VII. Soon thereafter, the current U.S. Women's National Team filed a lawsuit under the Equal Pay Act and Title VII, and that got dismissed. So to this day, I'm the only athlete that has an ongoing case in federal court under the Equal Pay Act and Title VII. And I wish I did it earlier. So where I failed is, as a 30-something-year-old woman, I didn't know my rights under the Equal Pay Act and Title VII. It took a very long time of feeling like things weren't right. Like, why do the men get treated better than the women? Why are they flying private charter planes? And why are we sitting, in economy class in the back row next to the bedroom, next to the bathroom in middle seats, going to our World Cup? Why are we playing on turf at a World Cup? So I had all these questions and doubts, and I barked up the wrong tree quite a bit. I was a thorn in the Federation side quite a bit, but I didn't understand the law behind it. It didn't feel right. I knew something wasn't right. But until we actually educate ourselves about the laws here in the United States, then we can't create change. And that's what I had to do, is I had to really educate myself, which I feel like I failed because it took me so long to realize, the actual law that I'm fighting for. And I think that's what I can tell people is, thank you for your support. I know you want to do good and help our cause. And the best thing that you can do is actually understand it, because I don't care if you don't think women should get paid equally as men. I don't care about your feelings. It's law here in the United States. So go ahead and educate yourselves on the law, so then we can have an intellectual conversation.
Thank you. Hope Solo is very passionate about equal rights for athletes, men and women, getting the disparity erased, and she's actually gone to court to do something about it, as we're learning. She also has a charity that she is extremely passionate about. We will learn about all of that when we come back on the Accutron Show.
This podcast is presented by Accutron Watches. Visit our website, accutronwatch.com, and discover our legacy collection, reviving some of the most memorable Accutron watches from the 60s and 70s. The legacy collection combines timeless design with the technical excellence of Swiss watchmaking, each limited to 600 individually numbered pieces. The Accutron Legacy Collection, inspired by the past, built for the future.
Hope, the folks at Accutron that sponsor this thing did a famous ad campaign called Equal Time, Equal Pay in the 70s. Why do you think the progress, we were starting to talk about the legal action you took, but why has there been such little progress made in this equal pay and equal recognition in the sporting world? Why is it taking so long?
Yeah, it's, props to you guys for being so, before your time, being able to see what should be done, not just by law, but to better our society. So that's incredible that you put an ad out back in 1974?
Yeah, in the 70s, yeah.
So the Equal Pay Act was passed in, I believe, is it 1963 or 1962? I should know that. I want to say 1963, but it was passed by John F. Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And, that's 60 years later, we're still fighting for our rights that we shouldn't have to fight for in the court system. They should be given to us because it's actual federal law. And I don't have the answer why we still have to do it, other than, I think a lot of people think we're further along than we really are. I've worked with United States senators, congressmen and women, Vice President Biden at the time. And the reality is that the general public thinks we're further along with equal pay than we really are. And
most of them think we have an equal rights amendment, which we don't, which is pretty amazing in this day and age. So, so where does the lawsuit stand? Where are we right now? How many have you been to? Who's heard the case, and what's the status of it at this moment?
So, unfortunately, the class action suits by the current team members got dismissed under summary judgment, which was a huge blow, because you think about how historical this case is, how popular it is. You have You have celebrities behind it. You have athletes behind it. You have senators behind it. You have commercial dollars behind the fight for equal pay following the U.S. women's national team. It's a very hot topic. Everybody just wants equal pay. Let's be done. Let's get over with it. But the Federation is fighting really hard, and they're really good at confusing the facts for the general public. So what was really mind-blowing to everybody is that the judge, as popular as this case is, the judge actually said, you know what, I'm going to dismiss this without even seeing anybody face to face. I'm going to dismiss it based on summary judgment, based off of the written documents. And that was really, really tough. And now this class action suit, this huge, highly profiled class action suit, very popular class action suit with players like Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, and one of the best, popular attorneys in the country, got dismissed without even hearing them. And now they're in appeal. The appellate court it could go either way. It's a, fairly conservative court. It could take up to 2.5 years to get in front of another judge. And that's where the class action stands. My case is the only standing case still in federal court. And we're continuing to work on settlements as well as pushing it forward in the court system. So I do have the only pending case left here in the United States in federal court.
Is the end game here to change the way things are conducted going forward? Or, I assume the end game is not a settlement to you. It's like you're doing fine, I think. But the idea is to change things for the future?
We've always said, when we first started this fight for equal pay back in 2015, we always said that it's not for us. We're not going to be the beneficiaries of this cause. It's going to be for future generations. And we knew that it was going to take a lot of sacrifice. We might lose pay, we might lose games, we might lose health insurances, but we're committed to doing it. And that was the most important thing. But then when you look at the United States Soccer Federation, a multi-million dollar company, they have power, they have experience, and they know how to divide and conquer, the age-old tactic of divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we want to play for our country, and we want to win gold medals and win World Cups. And so when you have somebody like Sunil Gulati, the former president, obviously former 2 presidents ago of U.S. Soccer, telling us that, that's a non-starter. We're not going to negotiate. You will never get paid as much as the men. Mm-hmm. And if you put down your foot and say that you want equal pay, then I'm going to cancel your games and you won't have health insurance. So that alone creates fear, and it divides our players. And you realize, some of the players just want to play in their first Olympics. And so it becomes very, very difficult to stand strong together because of the age-old tactic of divide and conquer and a multi-million-dollar company that you're going up against. And, we're trying to create a players association with very little money, and they have some of the best attorneys in the country. So, we hope our attorneys work for pro bono. That's right. What we're hoping for. So it's tough. It's really, really, really tough. We just hope that the history of the law is on our side, going back 60 years since, this was first put in place back in 1963, like I said, by JFK. So we can only hope that the history is on our side.
It does feel like you're still playing goalie here. Like they've beaten the rest of the team, and it's gotten down to it's just hope there in the goal. So yeah, I'm glad you still got your eye on that ball.
Really
Hope Solo for the save.
Right.
Hope, you're involved with many charities, in particular Street Soccer USA, which builds fields and brings coaches to poorer neighborhoods. Can you tell us a little about your involvement and what you do for charity work and how you support it?
Yeah, there's so many charities. I don't have my own charity. That's one of the first things that I got told by somebody at One Young World, which is probably one of the best organizations that I've been a part of. But we have so many nonprofit organizations that we can all benefit from, help, we can donate to. And when I realized what street soccer was doing here in the United States, I was dumbfounded. I was so dumbfounded because, why do I need to create my own, charity when they're doing such great work? And some of the work, my father was homeless growing up. He was a Vietnam vet, and he lived on the streets of Seattle. And so to see what street soccer is doing with some of the undereducated communities, the homeless communities, and also their participation with the Homeless World Cup, it felt like it was just people going out of their way to love and create better opportunities for others. And man, I committed myself at the very beginning to Street Soccer USA as well as to the Homeless World Cup. And it changes lives. You know, I went on the grounds. I can't remember. I think it was in Philadelphia where the tournament was held. But I went on the ground and I saw the lives that street soccer changed through hosting one tournament. And you have these dedicated coaches, these dedicated role models, teaching not just soccer, but life skills and getting people off the streets and giving them more passion to do better in their lives. I mean, sport can do so much for so many people, and soccer obviously is no different. I think soccer is one of the most welcoming sports in the world, although in the United States, we have made it a rich white kid sport. So it's become very alienating here in the United States. But street soccer is not divisive. They unify people and they bring people together through the sport of soccer. And I'm just so proud to see the lives that they change. And, you know, for me, it was easy to partner with them.
Why is soccer so big every place else in the world except in the United States?
Probably because of the lack of history here in the United States, our egos when it comes to baseball, football, and the American sports and basketball. But also, you know, it's a very diverse sport. We do need underprivileged kids to help make our sport better. We need Latino and Hispanic and kids from lower income communities to help build our national team. And when you have a system that's set up for only pay to play, when you have a system that's set up to pay thousands of dollars a year to play for the top clubs, those are the scouts that U.S. Soccer is sending out. The scouts go to, you know, the clubs of the MLS clubs. They're not going to the lower income communities. They're not watching street soccer by any means. They're not watching the Hispanic leagues. And so we're really not getting the best. This is what I say to people all the time. So LeBron James, right? Akron, Ohio, for God's sake. He's from Akron, Ohio. We don't have a system built here in the United States for soccer to get the needle out of a haystack, to find a kid who's from a low income community to play for the United States soccer team. We're not set up for that system. So here in the United States, it's very alienating, and soccer is supposed to be a very welcoming sport, and it is pretty much throughout Europe and throughout the world. And that's where we got it wrong here in the United States. Is it's a pay-to-play system. We're making money off the youth instead of the federation giving money back down to the youth. It's kind of the upside down triangle, and you know, it hurts me. You know, I fought against this for quite some time. I was able to make some change through some of my complaints with the United States Olympic Committee, because U.S. Soccer is a national governing body. It's a nonprofit organization, and they should be putting money back into the sport and not sitting on $70 million of surplus funds, because they are a nonprofit. So I've done everything I can to fight against the system and to give more kids opportunities, because we could have a U.S. Soccer men's team who should be qualifying for the World Cup and the Olympics every single year, if not winning it.
One would hope. Yeah, that's the most bizarre part. Literally, like everywhere you go, people are playing soccer. Everywhere we go to Spain, same thing. It's just everywhere, because it's such a low equipment sport. You would think this would be the most accessible sport. You just need a ball. Like you can make a goal. You know, you can't make a basketball hoop. You can't. You know, you don't have enough space to play baseball.
But Hope, with all due respect, I really blame the goalkeepers. So here's what I'm thinking. In America, we like high-scoring games, and you guys can go a whole season, and the top score is 1-0. And that's not the American way.
Everyone says that
we
goalkeeper
want a
did great.
final score of 40-41. I don't know. And then the disparity. So, but let's talk seriously about the disparity. What would the sports promoters say? Would they say that the men's games will bring more fans, that they can pay more because they get a bigger gate? What's their argument about not coming up with an equal pay?
Okay, so I'm going to address your first issue about the high scoring.
Okay. Just not let that one go.
Why is it 7 points for a touchdown in the United States? So let's say the score is 7-14. That's 2-1.
That's right.
That's a typical soccer score.
Right.
You
Anyway,
got me.
I'm married to an NFL player, and he actually loves the beauty of soccer. Even before we got married, he loved international football. And you know, he played American football his entire life. So I do have that person to bounce ideas off of. And I'm happy to have that because he has taught me, you know, the stop and play aspect and the beauty of American football. But he also sees the beauty of the evolution of the constant movement of the game and the creativity of the game, going through the midfield and making passes and creating and then defense. And so he understands that. And I love that because he was a novice probably, I guess, before we got married. So we've been married now for 9 years. So he was a novice probably 12 years ago. But now he's really come to understand and love the game. So it is possible, America, even if you're a football player, basketball player. Okay. But anyway, so I wanted to address that first. But the discrepancy, that's a tough one. Because like I said, the United States Soccer Federation has done a great job of kind of muddying up the waters for the American public. At the end of the day, you know, the Equal Pay Act, it specifically states if you have the same employer, the same job description, the same responsibilities, then you cannot discriminate based off of gender, right? And so you can't tell me that the men's national team and the women's national team do anything different. We're expected to play in World Cups. We're expected to do media appearances. We're expected to play domestic games. We're expected to be in camps. We're expected to go through the mixed zone, get on the bus after games, you know, be in your hotel. We do all the same stuff. So you really, based off of the law, you cannot discriminate or say that we do anything different based off of gender. What the United States Soccer Federation is doing is saying that the men get more fans than the women's team. Well, what I've seen personally when we played in my hometown of Seattle after the Women's World Cup in 2015, I had the owner of the stadium say to me, hey, I can fill the stadium. Why does U.S. Soccer only want to fill the lower bowl? The lower bowl. We're going to close the top tiers of the stadium, and we're going to keep it at about, you know, average 22,500 people. So in between 20,000 and 25,000 fans for the women's game. And they did this across stadiums throughout the United States. And when we actually opened up our stadiums, we would get more fans than the men's team. But for whatever reason, we played in either smaller stadiums, older stadiums, shitty stadiums. We played on turf, and our games didn't get marketed, so they kept the lower bowl closed.
And not only do you qualify for the World Cup, you win them.
Yeah.
It's like, what does it take?
Yeah, it's kind of insane, really.
In a career of highlights, do you have a most exhilarating moment, a time that you like to relive, or a time that was just so emotional, a breaking of the dam?
Yeah, shoot. You know, with Carly Lloyd's retirement, you know, over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've had to do a lot of interviews, documentaries about her. You know, she's going down and as probably the best all-around player for the United States, as well as international player. So I've done some interviews even for FIFA and all talking about my memories of Carly. And it's really brought me back to the memories that we shared together. And some of my highlights have always been playing with Carly. I mean, we're the same era. She was a leader on our team for a number of years. We were good friends and roommates. And so I've actually gotten really emotional lately, thinking back to my career and all of our highlights and lowlights together. And yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I always say that my favorite World Cup or my favorite all-time tournament was when we lost. And I'm such a winner and I'm so competitive that I can't believe I could say that. But the 2011 World Cup in Germany, where we lost to Japan, a very worthy opponent who they played with such emotion. They played with so much pride for the country after the devastation of their country through the earthquake and the tsunami that ensued afterwards. And they still sent a team, even though many of the players were missing family members. It was a very emotional and hard time for the Japanese team. And it was one of the first times I've actually seen we were the better team, but they were going to win it for their country. Wow. I've never seen anything really like that. It was beautiful. And I just had, I hate losing. To this day, I thought we were going to win that World Cup. I thought we were minutes away from actually winning. And then I tasted the loss. I tasted victory for a second. And then I just was brokenhearted that we lost, but I looked at what Japan did and I had so much admiration and respect for what they did for their country. So that's a very emotional and memorable tournament for me. I remember their captain came up to me and said, Hope, a good friend of mine, I played with her in St. Louis, my Ayama, and she came up to me and she said, I'm so sorry. I know it hurts. And I said, please go celebrate. Man, this may happen once in a lifetime. Don't feel bad for me. You need to go celebrate because this doesn't happen every day. And so that happened in 2011. And in 2015, when we actually won, man, thank God, because I don't think I could have retired without winning a World Cup. I don't think I would ever be able to sleep if I didn't finally win a World Cup. So the 2015 World Cup was very special. And especially when Carly scored that half field goal, she ran back to me, and it was kind of like this flood of emotions that came over us that we're finally doing this. We're gonna actually take home the World Cup.
Well, you're a true champion to say that one time you lost was one of your favorite times in this sport. That's unheard of. And I wonder, is there any sport where we have parity for golf? I guess the women golfers are paid less. What about driving? What about Dana? What about the women who jump into a sports car or a racing car and compete against men? They can win. Obviously, are they paid less by sponsors? Maybe or.
Yeah, I actually think sponsors might pay them more. I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the research in front of me, but I believe they had less races a lot of times. Like they couldn't take on as many races throughout the year. But I think the marketing definitely is there. I think a lot of marketing when it comes to women athletes is based off of, objectification and sexualization. Sure. And I went through that myself. I didn't want to go on Dancing with the Stars. I wanted to be known as an athlete first. Right. Always through and through, an athlete, a winner, a soccer player, period. I wasn't a dancer. I didn't want to be all Hollywood. I didn't want any of that. But then I realized that my money-making opportunities compared to, for instance, my husband who played in the NFL, he didn't have to go on Dancing with the Stars to make an extra buck. Yeah. He didn't have to, model on magazines to make an extra couple, $30,000 or whatever it was. And that is a pathway for women. So the marketing, I'm not going to say the marketing isn't there. That's oftentimes how we have to make money, but it does take away sometimes from the purity of the sport and the greatness of an athlete.
I mean, there are a bunch of obviously there's men going on Dancing with the Stars all the time, and out of their various other lives. How was that experience in terms of you're used to going, I can't imagine what it's like to be on the world stage in the World Cup as the goalkeeper of the team. That is unbelievably nerve-wracking. And then I go but wait, dancing on national TV. Dancing on national TV actually almost sounds scarier. I don't know which one is.
Still hear the music. It'd be my worst nightmare if I ever heard that music live again. It would just make my heart start to palpitate. I think I might have an anxiety attack. I think I drank white wine every day before I went dancing on stage. No, I mean that was tough. It was tough because obviously as a soccer field, I have confidence. Training. I'm such a hard trainer, such a hard worker that it gave me confidence. And I actually did really good on Dancing with the Stars. I got to the semifinal, but it wasn't in my wheelhouse. And, even part of the show, I was supposed to say that it was so hard, the physicality of it. And I was like, I've just been training for the world.
Yeah, I'm a professional athlete.
I'm not sore at all. And then people got mad that I was saying I'm not sore. So I wasn't quite fit for Hollywood because I was like, this is not hard. I mean, yeah, my feet hurt in these heels, but in terms of I'm not out of breath. Right. So it was very strange because I was supposed to play the part a little bit more than I did, I think.
Huh. Well, speaking of playing a part, you talk about Hollywood, you talk about getting dragged there. Your life feels like a movie to us, definitely with the component of taking on all the people that run the business and actually going into a courtroom. This feels like a movie to me. Who would you want to have play you?
Oh, that's too funny. Well,
and have you been approached? I mean, does anybody own the rights to a book about you or anything that could be turned into a screenplay?
Yeah, so I've done my first book. I actually had a very respectable writer, director come to my agent about, I think it must have been close to 20 years ago now. Actually, it was in 2007, I guess. So not 20 years, but 2007. And very respectable screenwriter, director. And he's done some great projects. And I wasn't ready. And all he really fixated on was my father being homeless. And that was so inspiring to have an Olympic athlete. His father was homeless. And how did she do it? Blah, blah, blah. Obviously, my life has changed so much since 2007. And I have an approach again. And I have given up some of my life rights. But I got to have a say in the writer and director. And I picked a very powerful female voice. So we'll see if that project ever gets done. But it seems like things continue to change, and we're in the process of writing a second book right now. And it's not going to be an autobiography because, trust me, that is so exhausting. I'm tired of talking about myself. I want to talk about, political issues and social issues, and obviously base them off of my life experiences, but also talk about what else we see in society. So it won't quite be an autobiography, but we are working on the second book as well.
Fascinating. Listen, this has been an incredible interview. You're an inspiration, obviously, to young girls, but to all people. Do you watch Ted Lasso?
You know what? Am I the only one that doesn't have Apple TV?
We'll send you. I only bring it up because we were talking earlier about the importance of getting people to know about soccer, and here's a show devoted to it with, I should tell you, some very strong women that aren't players but behind the scenes. Definitely worth a look. I think you'll also enjoy the Serena Williams and Venus Williams movie called King Richard that is about a father who mentored and coached his daughters, obviously, too. I'm sure they make a lot more than some of the male tennis counterparts in that world. So we are making some progress in some places. Hope Solo, this has been a treat. We've enjoyed having you, and we will watch your career. We will wait for the movie, and we will hope that you do well and prevail in the courtroom. Thanks for joining us on the Accutron Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hope.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Accutron Show. To listen to all of our shows, visit accutronwatch.com. To learn more about the world of Accutron, follow us on Instagram at AccutronWatch and subscribe to our podcast. From New York City, until next time, Accutron time.